When you're working in AutoCAD on any particular drawing, you draw everything full size, 1:1. Now you'll notice that we've got the same drawing open. We've got the O2 underscore managing files.dwg file open, and we're in our plan view. Now I'm in the model tab. I'm in what they call model space in AutoCAD. So you can see here, there's the model tab there. Now AutoCAD is a dual space environment. You do all your design work in the model tab at full size at 1:1, and then in your layout tabs, such as layout 1, layout 2, layout 3, you set out your title block and your scale viewports to create scale views like 1:100, 1:200, 1:250, and so on. Now the reason you do that is there's no way that you could fit this particular building onto one sheet of paper. You would have to scale it down, make it smaller, make it fit into that scaled viewport. Now, in order to do that, you need to know what the units are that you're working in. Now, one of the things with AutoCAD is it never actually physically tells you what the physical units of measurement are. You have to specify that in your drawing and make sure you stick to it. And then when you're scaling your viewports, you obviously refer to that by way of scaling so that you know what is the right size and what is the right scale. Now, I'm going to zoom in on this top left corner here. So you can see there's my grid lines, J, I, and H. And just here you can see door openings and things, and they're all dimensioned up and annotated nice and neatly. Now if I look at this door opening here, a sanity check is to look at a door opening and either measure the distance using the distance command or look at the dimension. So that dimension there is 1830. Now would that be 1830 inches, 1830 kilometers, 1830 miles? It's not, is it? It's got to be a sensible dimension in context, and that's why you set your units. So you can see here that that's 1830. That would be 1830 millimeters, which is roughly under a little bit by about 2 meters. So that's roughly 2 meters at that opening there. If you rounded it up loosely, 2 meters, but it's 1830 millimeters or 1.83 meters. So how do I set my units when I'm working in AutoCAD so that they all measure appropriately? Well, the easiest way to do it, make sure you've got your dynamic input on and type units like that. And you'll see that comes up on the suggestion menu at the top there. Press enter for units and the units dialog box kicks in. I'll just drag that down into the center of the screen. So you can see there we've got length and angle and also an insertion scale. Now be careful with all of these. These would normally be set up in your drawing template, or if you're setting them in an existing drawing, make sure they tally up with the units that you're using. So for example, at the moment we're using decimal and decimal degrees. So make sure if you're using decimal, is it decimal inches? Is it decimal feet? Is it decimal millimeters? Is it decimal meters? Be careful so that you know. And you'll always utilize the units that you're comfortable with. So in the UK, for example, I use millimeters all the time. In the USA, you would use inches, obviously. Now, what we do is we select the type of units we want. We have architectural, decimal, engineering, fractional, and scientific. Architectural, if I click on it, you can see feet and inches. Decimal could be either, could be feet or inches because it's just decimal. If I come down here, engineering, you'll notice decimal, feet and inches. Fractional, you'll notice, is inches. And scientific gives you that e to the plus 0.1. So that's 1 times 10 to the power of 1. So exponential scientific units are used for very long distances. Normally, we tend to work with decimal, like so. Now the precision there is quite high. AutoCAD goes up to 20 decimal places in the background. Be careful of that. Most of the time, even if you're working in feet and inches, you wouldn't normally go over 2 decimal places for distance or length. And the angle, you work it in the same way. So decimal degrees, or I could use degrees, minutes and seconds, or I could use gradients or radians, which are mathematical methods of calculating angles, or I could use surveyor's units using the points of the compass there. So north 0 degrees east. Most of the time again though, you would use decimal degrees. Now normally I leave that precision set with no decimal places. However, be careful. Don't go to something like 8 decimal places, because what will happen there is if you've only got that tiny little change in angle, it could potentially affect what your dimension annotation looks like. More importantly, it could affect positioning of a model in a drawing as well, because you've got such a small fraction of error there. So I would say, roughly speaking, 4 decimal places is a good option there. Now be aware, AutoCAD measures all angles counterclockwise or anti-clockwise. If you want to go in the other direction, you tick the clockwise box like so. Now also, insertion scale. We're going to look at AutoCAD blocks later on, and when you insert a block that is imperial units, say inches, into a millimeter metric drawing, you can ask AutoCAD to scale to the inserted content. So I'm saying that everything that I bring in needs to be in millimeters. And you saw that great big long list of units. There's plenty of different types of units you can use. Lighting, you don't need to worry about. That's primarily for 3D modeling when you're adding lighting to render models. But it's set by default there to international or American. So you can use either of those. Now, direction, I mentioned this with angles here, clockwise. If I click on the direction button, you can see in the direction control, which I'll just bring over here. If I use a base angle of east going to the right, it's 0 degrees. If I change that to north, you'll see that 90 degrees becomes the angle. So north pointing upwards, it's still 90 degrees. I can choose a different type of angle if I want, and it's all about working with the angle that you're comfortable with. But be aware that the default is east to the right along the x-axis is your 0 degree line. So again, set that to what you need, click on OK. Set your units to what you need, click on OK. Save your drawing, or more importantly, if you're putting that into a template, save it to a template.